Okay, we're on the air with the first post-draft chat. Let's get right to it. There's a question from Al. What grade would you give the Cardinals for their draft picks? You know, it's kind of a cop-out to say, but it's true. I hate giving grades right after a draft because you really don't know about these guys, at least most of them, for a year or two. But immediately I would say a B. I haven't seen much of many of these guys. I thought it was a really kind of nuts and bolts draft where they filled needs, didn't do anything too flashy, didn't take any big names. I like the 2 third-round picks from what I've gathered so far. I think Kareem Martin is a defensive end they really needed to eventually replace maybe Darnell Dockett and this year, give him some pass rush. Really like receiver John Brown and everything I've heard about him so far. I think he also gives them a really speedy guy at receiver, something else they needed. So I would say a B. The one thing I would have liked to see him do, and I think General Manager Steve Keim said he tried, is trade down to get more picks. I think he really wanted to come out of this with more than 7 players, but he wasn't able to pull off some stuff in the second and third day of the drafts. Another question: how many of the Cardinals picks do you think make the roster? Always a tough call. I mean, I would say probably 5. The selection of receiver Walt Powell in the 7th round, I kind of wonder about after taking Brown in the 3rd if that was really a need. But it's hard to say without having seen these guys play. You know, it's not unusual for, you know, the vast majority of draft picks to make the team these days. They work cheap. Bruce Arians has a reputation of playing youngsters, rookies. He's not afraid to do it. So, you know, you could see, you know, all 7. You could see 4 with a couple on the practice squad. A lot of different combinations, but I would think you'd see somewhere around 6 on the roster in some form, 5, 6. From Bruce Robinson, 68. Are you happy to see a player not get drafted so you can sign them as an undrafted? I assume by you mean a team. Yeah, I think, you know, if you're the Cardinals or any team and you have your eye on a guy and you don't use a draft pick on him and you think you can get him in undrafted free agency, sure, you're thrilled when nobody takes him. And the Cardinals started, I think, probably earlier than ever recruiting those kind of guys, making phone calls, trying to say, hey, we have a need here. If you don't get drafted, you know, think of us first, because all that happens really quickly after a draft. From AZ Cards fan, in your opinion, who's the best pickup we made? In the draft, you're talking about the draft only. I like the 2 third-rounders. I think you can get great value there, and Kareem Martin really intrigues me. A guy who went from, I think, 4 sacks his junior year to 11.5 sacks his senior year, and showed a lot of improvement. And he gave a lot of credit to a new defensive line coach at North Carolina that taught him some moves. And I think the Cardinals have a lot of experienced teachers at that spot who can bring him along. You know, they've got a bunch of veterans, and I think he's kind of scratching the surface of what he can be. I'm really intrigued to see him. And John Brown, I like what I've heard about him so far from both his college coaches and from scouts. Really intriguing guy, and I especially like him in Bruce Arians' system, who has a track record of using young players and receivers like T.Y. Hilton, for instance, at the Colts really comes to mind. If you're talking about free agency, I mean, I think Jared Veldheer is the key to the whole thing. He has to solidify that left tackle spot. I like that they were able to go out and get him. You know, he's young, could fill that spot for several more years, and if he can play, it's not like they overspent to get him. Let's see, from Tara, were you surprised about Manziel going solo? Also, did you participate in the this hashtag before Manziel gets drafted hashtag on Twitter? What was the best jab you saw, if so? I saw it, but I didn't participate. I thought it was hilarious, though. I can't remember the best one I saw. maybe something like, Donald Sterling returns to the NBA, something like that, or Donald Sterling gets an NAACP award before Manziel gets drafted. I was a little surprised he went so low. I know a lot of mock drafts in the days before the draft had him going low and had him falling, and I didn't really believe it. I still thought he would be in the top 10, so it surprises me a little bit given how important quarterback is in this league. And excuse me while I take a sip of my Dutch Brothers. They are not a sponsor of this chat. From Aaron, do you think Ryan Williams deserved one last chance with the Cardinals? I don't know about deserved. He missed all of 1 year with an injury, missed most of his second year with an injury. Last year, coaches were very disappointed. He didn't work more in training camp. I would have liked to have seen him get one more chance. I just remember him as a rookie and a little bit his second year, how quick he was and the moves he made, especially between the tackle runs. And I just think he could bring an element that the Cardinals really don't have right now. But I understand their lack of patience, or their patience being over with him. But I still think the guy can play. I think myself that Ryan's been the victim of some bad luck. I think also Ryan tends to think too much, if that makes any sense. He tends to overanalyze everything about his injury and situation, and I think sometimes he just needs somehow to get a clear mind and just go play and let his natural ability take over. I think he just kind of worries too much about every little thing, but that's easy for someone else to say. I get that. From David W., what's the latest on the starting right tackle? The latest is we haven't been able to go out and watch the first few days of voluntary practice, but Bradley Sowell is starting there right now. I bumped into offensive line coach Harold Goodwin yesterday and just said, hey, you've got Sowell there right now. And he goes, yeah, but it's really, really early. We're going to take a long look at him. Bobby Massey has a chance. Nate Potter has a chance. They think the answer there is on the roster. One of those three guys will take the position and be fine. Last year they thought the same thing and they went through OTAs and were really disappointed in the number of mental errors Massey made, and that prompted them to go out and get Eric Winston. I know a lot of people are clamoring for Eric Winston to come back. I get the feeling in the organization that he would play just okay last year, and that one of these three youngsters could play better given some time and experience. We'll see. Massey, certainly at the end of 2012 when he played the last 8 games, I thought he was really good. I've never really seen a player turn the corner and have such a different first half versus second half, and the lights seem to have come on, and now with the new coaching staff, the light's off again. So I think they have ability there, and they would like to go with one of those guys who are on the roster, but that leaves an inexperienced right side possibly, especially if Earl Watford wins that right guard job over Paul Faneca. Then you've got, you could have a couple of second-year player, third-year player, not a lot of experience on that right side, but, you can't have a perfect situation in this league, and we'll see. It'll be interesting. That's, I think, the number 1 and 2 jobs up for grabs in this summer in this training camp. This is from Avi Soap. I hope I pronounced that right. Will Troy Nicholas' role be more of a blocking tight end to help the weak offensive line, or will we see him be used as a big patch catcher and red zone target as well? Well, I think the Cardinals would disagree that this is going to be a weak offensive line. I think they feel like they've rebuilt it, and that's not going to be a weakness. That said, I think they feel like he could contribute right away as a blocker, maybe more than a receiver. He's a big kid, 6'6", 260-something pounds. He doesn't look like he's that heavy. He looks like he could really move. I think it'll really help in some situations. Last year they had to go to bring in a third tackle as that extra tight end, and obviously teams knew that you weren't going to throw to that guy. Now the throwing is a threat. We've all seen the tight ends in play action hold a block for a minute, then release into a pattern and be wide open. That wasn't available to them so much last year. They think it's going to be this year. Hard to say. I haven't seen him play. I know he's young, and he hasn't played tight end that much. He's got some pretty good hands. We'll see what kind of routes he runs, how quickly he picks up the passing game. But I think he's going to be more than just a blocking tight end. At least that's the goal, and especially when you pick him that high in the second round, the Cardinals want him to be more than that. Will Deon Buchanan significantly help the defense in terms of covering safeties? I think he means tight ends, because a lot of tight ends burned this team throughout last season. I think he will help. That's the goal anyway, and if he doesn't, then it'll be a bit of a disappointment. I think it's going to be an adjustment period, though. You know, I read a story a couple of weeks ago about Seattle safety Earl Thomas, who was a first-round pick, I think, and, you know, a big-time player out of Texas, and just got paid big money. I mean, Seattle just re-signed him, but his first year or so, he struggled some against the pass. It took some adjustments. He took some bad angles. He didn't play it all that well. It's certainly not nearly what he is now. He improved drastically. So I think, you know, when it comes to all rookies, but maybe especially Buchanan, got to give him a little bit of space to learn. That said, you know, people I talked to who really liked him coming out of Washington State, but the big question is, how good of a pass defender is he? You know, a little bit of tape I've seen, there were times he took bad angles or missed tackles, maybe didn't break down like he should in open space. Those are normal things young guys do. But, you know, I like his attitude. Having met him, he's really mature, and he just puts off a good vibe that he wants to be good. So you know, you like those guys. Those are the guys who are really worth a little bit of risk. But I think it's going to take some development. But I really like the way that secondary shapes up now. They're bigger guys outside of Tyrann Mathieu. They're young. I think I saw a stat the other day of maybe the second youngest starting secondary in the league. So a lot of room for growth there. But I think, you know, there are going to be times where we see some breakdowns and some blown coverages. From Francisco, do you think Fitz will top 1,000 yards this season with a year under his belt with Arians' system and Palmer? Thanks. I would say yes. It's been the last 2 years he hasn't broken that 1,000-yard barrier, I don't think. But he did have 10 touchdowns last year, which was his most since, you know, the playoff years. So it wasn't a total, you know, disaster. Certainly wasn't 2012. But yeah, I think he will. I think Carson Palmer will be better. I think that's the whole key. Will Palmer be protected better? Will Palmer cut down on the number of mistakes? I really think the key for this season, one of them to look at it from Palmer's perspective, is will he finish the season with at least 10 more touchdown passes than interceptions? I think if that happens, this team is a playoff team. If he doesn't make that leap, I think they're really going to struggle, especially in the division. How much of an improvement can be expected from the offensive line this season? From a fan in Colombia. Holmes? That's from Holmes. My two sons are in Colombia right now, so, you know, I know decent-sized country, but they're enjoying your country. It's beautiful. I think you can expect a lot. One thing I liked Bruce Arians' staff structure over staffs in the past, Ken Wisenhunt and others, is that there were three guys coaching the offensive line. You had Harold, who was the offensive coordinator, offensive line coach. You had Larry Zerline, you know, and then you had David Deontay's Infante. So there's a lot of individual work, I think, that was missing from past years, and I think maybe that's why some younger guys didn't develop as fast as the Cardinals and as fast as their fans wanted them to. So I think they're going to be better. I think Beldier is an obvious upgrade at left tackle. I think Jonathan Cooper will be an upgrade at left guard. Like I said before, the right side is the question. You know, those guys have to develop, and they, you know, again, you're putting parts together an offensive line, and it takes a while for those guys to come together. We saw that last year. From Mark Offenlock, why didn't the Cardinals take A.J. McCarron as a quarterback? You know, I don't know. Steve Keim was asked a couple times in the draft about why they didn't take specific players, and he he kind of took offense to the question or bristled a little bit. You know, teams normally aren't going to tell you what they didn't like about certain people. I know, you know, during draft day there were a lot of reports on television that McCarron had turned people off in interviews, that people thought he was cocky. I don't know if that's true. Normally I would like my quarterback to be a little cocky, but maybe he rubbed people the wrong way. I just think they felt like Logan Thomas has a bigger upside. He's bigger, his arm's stronger, he's more mobile. I think that really intrigues them about Logan Thomas. They don't have a quarterback. The other three quarterbacks they have on the roster really aren't creators once something breaks down. Not that Bruce Arians wants his quarterbacks running around like crazy, but you know, you do want guys who can get out of the pocket and be a little bit unpredictable and can make something out of chaos. And I think Logan Thomas has that potential. I don't think A.J. McCarron does. From Orville Boggs, this will be our last one, it looks like. Is Peterson's deal taking so long because he is waited for the other top cornerbacks to sign theirs first to set the market? Yeah, I mean, I don't think this has taken very long at all. You know, really, I think we put it in perspective. He's got 2 years left on his deal, so watch the rush. But definitely his agents, Joel Siegel and Chaffee Fields, wanted to see Richard Sherman's deal come in before they committed. The last thing an agent wants to do is sign a deal and then have somebody else, you know, sign a deal that dwarfs it. So no question. And I think that helps all sides, is that Richard Sherman's agreed to a deal. Joe Hayden of the Browns has agreed to a deal. The parameters are set. I don't know how quickly this will all come together, but you know, to me, it shouldn't take very long. Patrick wants to be here. Now, the Cardinals have a little bit more leverage. The situation's a little bit different than the Seahawks and Sherman was. Sherman was in the last year of a contract, his 4-year deal. The team didn't have an option for a 5th year because he wasn't a first-round pick. The Cardinals had an option for 2015. They exercised it, and thought it was interesting earlier this week talking to Patrick. He made that point himself. Nobody brought it up to him. He made that point that, hey, I have 2 years left on my deal. Richard Sherman had 1. Now, what that means, I don't know. Maybe does it mean, you know, the Cardinals have a little more leverage and they can get him to take, you know, a lesser deal? And maybe I thought it was a good indication anyway that Patrick realizes that, because a lot of players, I think, have a hard time understanding their own contract situation. They immediately compare it to somebody else, which, you know, in all areas the comparisons might not be equal. So I think it's going to get done. I think Patrick wants to be here. The Cardinals obviously are motivated. What Steve Keim doesn't want to do is create a contract that really, you know, really binds the team's hands going forward. I think he looks back at maybe, you know, the Larry Fitzgerald, some of his extensions and some given to other guys, and he wants to be very careful that there's some flexibility down the line, and they aren't just investing everything in one player. So it's a delicate deal, but the Cardinals and Joel Siegel and Chaffee Fields, Patrick's agents, have done deals before. Neither side's really talking about it, so that's a sign that maybe things are progressing, because you don't see posturing from either side, and you don't see either side kind of using the media to get, you know, this word out, that word out. I think if you start to see that stuff, that'll be an indication that maybe things have turned south. Great questions, everybody. Enjoy the weekend. Be safe out there, and we'll do this again soon.